Today's episode of Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is one of the most unusual shows this station has ever aired. Today, we talk about taxidermy.
Anyone ever walk in with antlers and say, here, put a deer under these?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Taxidermy on Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. It's another one of those things we take for granted in Maine. We see it all the time, but never give any thought to how that happened. Today, we'll give it some thought. I'm at Northland Taxidermy in Alton with John Dykstra, one of the best taxidermists in the entire state. What he's doing goes way past mounting. This is art, and it's about time we learn what goes into it. Art is making the mount look as lifelike as possible, from the way it stands to the way it gazes. In John's shop, you're surrounded by deer, moose, and bears, but also otters, birds, and fish. You can mount just about anything, from deceased pets to roadkill. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Now then, at Northland Taxidermy in Alton, let's step inside.
John Dykstra, Northland Taxidermy. I'm sitting in your office right now, surrounded by what appears to be hundreds of trophies.
Yeah.
Are these all yours?
No,
These are all customers?
mostly customer stuff.
Well, I mean, just
There's a few-
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you go down to my house, there's an equal number down there that are ours.
But when I say a lot, there's at least 20 deer heads on the wall here, and at least 2 moose.
A couple of moose, an elk,
Yeah.
a few fish,
Few bear.
bears, miscellaneous. And what's actually here all depends on what we've completed recently.
So this must keep you busy full time.
We do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is a professionally licensed activity.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize. I thought anybody could do taxidermy, but it turns out
Well,
you
they can
actually,
if they get a license.
if they get a license. Why do you need a license? I would think the first thing is,
You didn't used to.
yeah. But you're in possession of a lot of critters,
Right.
more than a bag limit, so
Yeah.
you have to be able to prove to somebody, I guess, that,
We've got to keep a logbook.
yeah.
When somebody brings something through the door, we've got to have their name, address, license number, seal number, whatever goes with it, and that gets handed into the state, or at least if it's not handed in, they just changed that now. They said that we used to have to send them in there once a year. Now, I guess we're going to keep them, but it's subject to inspection whenever they want. Anytime a warden wants to check you out, he's free to come and do so.
Does that happen a lot? Are there any people out there in Maine who are...
We've been checked a number of times.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's been. There was a couple times we just got checked to be checked, and most of the time when the warden comes in, he's looking for something.
Yeah.
In particular, did you get a such and such from somebody?
Right. Well, I mean, there must have been somebody in history who had 4 deer in the freezer and says, well, I'm allowed to have all 4. I'm a taxidermist.
Well, I don't know. Potentially, I don't know. I mean,
It seems like just one way to cheat the system. But this would have been years ago. That doesn't happen
now.
I'm sure.
We don't want to give them any reason to come.
Right.
I mean, they're welcome to come anytime they want, but we don't want to give them a reason to.
But do you have to actually demonstrate any proficiency in order to get a license?
There's a test for it, written as well as oral, and specimens. You have to be certified in any particular category, say game heads or white-tailed deer. You have to show them a deer head that you did. If you for small animals, you got to show them some kind of a small mammal that you've done. Bird, you got to come up with a bird. And for fish, the same thing, a fish of some kind.
So do you actually have to prove that you're competent at all of these, or you're only allowed to work on deer if you pass the deer pot?
You're only allowed to work on deer if you pass the deer
Really?
pot. Yeah, I mean you can be certified in any as a general taxidermist, or you can be licensed in any particular category.
I never would have guessed it was that complicated.
It's no different than any other profession.
I suppose so. Cosmetology.
I mean, most professions now you have to have some kind of degree of proficiency about it. I mean, in the past, you didn't need a license. I mean, a number of years ago, and then it was anybody could do it, but the ones who survived were the ones who were good at it. I mean, it was the buyer beware, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I would think.
And it still is, because I mean, they approve you as a licensure, but there's still a degree of difference between some work and other work.
Well, obviously you have a very good reputation because everybody seems to know your work.
People have seen a lot of my work. They keep coming back, so they must like what they're getting. So, and if there's a problem, we want to be the first one to hear about it because we want to try to make it right. Whatever, if it's not right for them, we want it to be right for them.
Well, you actually get asked to mount a lot of different critters. Even lobster is shown on your website.
Yeah.
A lot. Have you actually had to mount a lobster for somebody?
A couple of 2 or 3 of them. Yeah.
What goes into mounting a lobster?
We clean out the meat out of the shell. We drill holes and we can get the meat out of it, and then we soak it in a preservative and dry it out for the most part. And anything that needs to come apart, sometimes the legs have to come off, and we'll glue those back on and whatever.
Sounds like a lot of work to mount a lobster.
It's different.
Well, this is probably 90% art.
That's what they tell me, yeah.
The point is to make it look lifelike. It's not enough just to mount something.
Yeah.
You really have to give it an expression, make it look lifelike.
Yeah.
How much inspiration goes into that?
A lot of reference. I've grown up hunting. I've grown up around wildlife all the time, so I've seen a lot of it. And then when you look at something, you know when it's not right. And you use pictures, you use casts and molds, whatever, a shape of a nose to model the inside of a nose. Say, for colors on fish, we want photographs, and particularly on fish that vary in colors, you'll want a picture of that particular fish. The brook trout will vary quite a lot in color, and if a guy wants it, I can paint it as a generic brook trout, and it's going to look good. But if they want it to look like their brook trout, I need a picture.
Yeah. Now, in the case of the fish, is that the actual fish, or is it a plaster cast?
That's an actual fish.
Okay.
We do probably 95% of the fish that we do are natural fish. We can do reproductions. Most people want their fish.
Right.
Where we get into doing reproductions is with somebody that maybe caught it in a fly fishing only area, or catch and release, where they couldn't keep the fish. And occasionally we've had people come in that they've caught a fish, they wish they had it done, and they ate it or they did something to it, and they don't have the fish anymore, but they want one less like it. And we can order a mannequin, or not a mannequin, but actually a fish blank that has to be painted. But the artificial ones cost more than the real ones because you have to buy the fish blank.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about making things look lifelike, I look around the room at all these deer heads. Every one of them is looking to the side a little bit. It's not normal to have a deer, I guess, stand right there and look straight at you. It's always aware of its surroundings. So none of these guys are looking straight ahead.
I don't like doing straight-on mounts.
Yeah.
They look stiff to me. They tend to look like they don't look right. They look fake. They look stiff. If a guy's got a dozen deer heads and he wants one straight on, I won't work too hard to convince him not to. But if it's a guy's first deer head or so, I will suggest doing it some turned one side or the other because it looks better.
Yep.
I think.
Well, look around. Even the moose are looking off to one side. The bear are looking off to one side.
If you think about the older taxidermy, most all of those were done straight on.
Yeah.
And they weren't very real lifelike a lot of times. I mean, they were. Yeah, you could recognize them as a moose or a deer, but a lot of times they. If you had a real deer next to it, they wouldn't look very much like it. When I got started in taxidermy around 1980, it was just about the time that styrofoam mannequins were coming into existence, and the companies were creating a lot of new materials, and they wanted you to learn how to use it. So I didn't go to school for it. I learned a lot of it by paying attention. And looking at the supply catalogs and see they had instructions on the back and so on. And then how good, I mean, you can give somebody instructions, but again, it's an art to a certain extent, and how good you are at it depends on how well you apply that and how you apply it and make it look real.
My guest is John Dykstra, and we're at Northland Taxidermy in Alton. Taxidermy is difficult. It takes a while to learn and a lot of practice to get good at it. It's not one of those things you learn in school, and there aren't that many people who can teach it. So my next question to John, where did you learn it? This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Today's show is coming to you from Alton. We're in the workshop at Northland Taxidermy. John Dykstra is one of the most popular taxidermists in the entire area, and his work is admired across the state. Today, we're finding out how he does it, and I start by asking how much of this was self-taught and how much did you learn from a mentor?
There was an old set of lessons for the Northwest School of Taxidermy. There probably some people have seen the ads for that in the back of Outdoor Life when I was growing up and such. And my father had gotten one back in the 40s, and he still had it in a drawer somewhere, and I picked it up in the 70s and read through it. And it was probably early 70s, I guess, that I got started tinkering around with it. And then that gives you the basics. It's still, a lot of it's still the basics. It's still the same stuff, even though it's hundreds of years old, whatever.
Well, you were always hunting all your life, so you had skins to play with.
Yeah.
You have to learn on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But the way you do things is not, as far as skinning something, it's not much different now than it was in the turn of the century.
Well, there's no reason for that technology to change very much.
No, the materials that are available to use after that's done, and the tanning processes and stuff like that. They used to use arsenic, which was pretty nasty.
Exactly.
If you weren't careful, you weren't liable. They weren't around long.
No. In fact, a lot of these old displays are really behind glass saying, don't open this, don't touch.
Yeah.
Because there's so much arsenic in some of those, especially the bird displays. They were, because I guess things will eat feathers over time.
And arsenic won't let them.
Yeah, arsenic, yeah, exactly right.
They've got some good stuff out now, too, for preservative.
Yeah.
And it's not toxic.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know what the names of it are, whatever. We sent most of the mammal skins, we send them to a tannery for the most part, and they do the actual tanning, and then once we get them back, we mount them, put them over form.
So once they're tanned and mounted and on the wall, is there any further maintenance the owner has to do with the deer head, or is it now preserved forever?
How long it lasts is going to depend on how well they treat it, just like anything.
How often you dust it?
Dusting it to a certain extent. But if you put it someplace where it gets direct sunlight, it's going to fade. You're going to have and eventually over time, if it's a real bright window, you're going to have a white side and a dark side. I mean, they almost turn almost white on the side that faces the sun. And the other side doesn't get as dark, so they look like half white and half brown.
Is it possible to repair one of those, or is it too late? I mean, do you get called to fix them?
We can, when they're that faded, I can't bring the color back in the hair. I can touch it up with paint and make it look better than it did, but I can't bring it back to looking like a brand new mount. On a deer head, depending on what the sentimental value is, I usually tell them that we can find another deer to donate his hide, and we'll and then it's a brand new mount. We just keep the horns and put the horns on another, or antlers, I guess, correctly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah,
we still call them horns, but you keep the antlers and you put them on a new mannequin and a new cape, and you got a really nice looking mount then.
Well, bear, deer, bobcat, wildebeest. What do you ask to stuff most often?
Deer, bear, and moose. Primarily. That's probably the bulk of things. There's a pretty good market for fish. I tend to be a little behind on fish because I haven't been able to keep up with everything. I've got one of my boys working with me now who's learning things, and we're catching up. So my apologies to people that have got mounts here and haven't got them back yet, but they'll be coming soon. And when they're done, they'll look good. That's been a lot of people say, well, I wait. They want it back right away, and they take it to somebody that gets it back right away. And sometimes they don't like. Sometimes it don't come out so good. But we try to do a good job with it. It may take us a while to get to it, but when it's done, it's going to look good.
Mounting a mammal must be different than mounting a fish or a bird.
The basics are the same. You skin it, and you put a mannequin inside of it. Replace the meat with styrofoam or clay or whatever. But yeah, they're different. A fish. There's a lot of painting involved.
Right. Yeah.
all the colors on a fish will fade. And every spot on a brook trout has to be painted back on there. The pattern is still there on a skin mount. The pattern is still there, but all the color is gone.
So the outside is pretty much lacquered and then painted, or how's that work?
It's painted and then glossed over, lacquered. Yeah, we use a lacquer paint with a spray booth.
So anyone ever want a roadkill mounted?
We do roadkills. We do lobsters, like you said. We do
What's the most unusual thing anyone's ever asked you to mount?
We've done some lizards.
Have you really? I was wondering. I was going to ask. Yeah. Have you ever been asked to do reptiles? And I said no.
Haven't done a snake. I can't remember doing a snake.
Mm-hmm. Is there even a mannequin for a snake?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there is to a certain extent. Or if there isn't one, you have to make one. I mean, that's. We do some pets too. We get occasionally requests for dogs and cats.
Yeah.
And I emphasize to people that I can make it look good, but I can't make it alive again. He's not there anymore.
Yeah.
He's left.
Yeah. This is not going to sit in your lap.
Right. I mean, and I'm pretty adamant about it. It's expensive to do them because they don't make a standard mannequin for
Fluffy.
Yeah, or Fido.
Right.
So most all the mannequins have to be custom made. So they're very expensive to do, and I have to have good reference to do it, and I try to discourage them to see that if they really want to do it.
Mm-hmm. But you have been.
I've done them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just did a what was it? Dog's name was Splash. It was a Pomeranian. A woman was tickled to death with it. She was happy as could be. But she was quite upset that she lost it, and I tried to explain to her that, but she wanted them back. So we did them, and I'm always concerned when they get them with what they're going to look like, because what they're going to think of them, because a coyote, you didn't know a coyote personally, you didn't know a bobcat personally, or a deer. You don't. I mean, so you don't know what their expressions naturally were. As long as you get a good generic looking coyote or a deer or whatever, they're going to look good. But Fluffy, you knew.
Right. And Fluffy may have had expressions that you can't recreate.
Expressions and such that you can't, unless you have a really good reference for it, you can't recreate that.
Okay, it's stuff like this that makes me think of too many weird questions. Now, I'm just guessing here, but how many people want to preserve a beloved pet? And if so, how many would be satisfied with just putting the head up on the wall? No, that's not the way you'd want to remember a pet. And then I think, how many people have room in the house for an entire moose? Most trophies are also just heads in the wall. I'm with John Dykstra at Northland Taxidermy in Alton, and that's my next question. How many people want an entire big game animal mounted? This is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8. This is a show taking place in Alton today, inside Northland Taxidermy. John Dykstra has a short commute to work. He just walks across the driveway. John's work is so well known that this is a full-time job. It takes a while to get each mount done because there's a lot of painstaking care that goes into it. And the bigger they are, the longer it takes.
How many people want a full-sized animal? Probably a lot of bears are mounted for full-size.
We do some full-size bears.
Yeah. Deer, not so much. I think it's mostly deer.
I've done a couple of deer, but not many.
Moose, full-size moose. How many people have room?
No, rare. We've done one.
Yeah.
I think we've worked on one life-size moose with another taxidermist. I was helping him out with it.
Yeah, but mostly they want that mounted so it can go over the fireplace.
Most of them, I mean, for one, it's expensive to do a life-size one. For two, it takes up a heck of a lot of room.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you say expensive, how much would it take to just ballpark on a full-size moose?
$5,000-6,000.
Oh wow! Better love that moose.
You better, yeah. I'm just. Well, I can look up a mannequin, but I think a mannequin is probably close to $2,000 just for the body.
And what would that mannequin be made out of?
Styrofoam and steel rods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Chunk of wood in the top of the head for to screw the antlers down to.
Mm-hmm. You got to get the eyes exactly right, otherwise,
if the facial expression's not right, the rest of it's not going to look good.
Exactly. So, picking the eye, getting that mounted right, must be painstaking. Walk me through that. You have a drawer full of glass eyes here, or what?
No, well, I mean, you can order glass eyes for deer. So we order the appropriate size for the appropriate deer that we're working on, and then you have to have either from doing the number. We've done a couple of them. Initially, you're going to have to work from a lot of reference, and you're still going to look at reference every once in a while to see what that's supposed to look like in a picture, so then you make them match that picture to what you're doing. But the eyes are pretty standard as far as species-specific type things.
Yeah. Well, walk me through exactly how a mount happens. Let's just take a deer head, for instance. The deer comes in the door. What happens next? And follow the steps through until it's done.
Well, first you got to listen to the story, and you got to hear how it was gotten, and all that. And so generally, that's part of doing it. The guy comes in, he wants to tell you how he got this deer. I mean, it means a lot to him, and it should. And I don't care how big the deer is. It might be a spike horn. If it's the kid's first year, we're going to hear that story. We want to hear it too. We want to hear it too.
Well, I would think the stories are kind of the fun part.
It is, yeah. But anyways, once we get done with talking about it, then we got to write up and decide how he wants to get it done, and then we do the paperwork. He signs the logbook, and we then he's on his way, and we've got the deer head here, and we've got to skin it, take the antlers out of it, we flesh it, turn the ears, turn the lips, then salt the hide, and get it ready to go to the tannery. The next step is when it comes time to send it to the tannery, we have to punch all those hides with identifying punches so that we can identify whose hide is which. And then they all get loaded up in a truck, and off they go to the tannery. And then they come back. We got to look at those punches, and according to the piece of paper that we wrote them down on, and sort them back out again as to which hide is which, and names, and then we order the supplies for each one. And finally, we get around to mounting them. The hide's got to be soaked up if it was dry tanned. If it comes back with a wet tan, then we can thaw it out. It'll come out of the freezer. It gets put on the mannequin. Then it has to dry. Once it's dried for 4 or 5 days or a week, or depending on what the season, how humid it is out, how long it takes to get it dry. Then the inside of the nose, around the eyes, the lips, and that sort of thing, all has to be, any shrinkage has to be rebuilt. Once that's done, then all those areas need to be painted. Any scars on it, we touch up scars and things like that. Clean the antlers if they need it, that sort of thing.
By the very nature of how a critter was harvested, there must be some damage that needs a little bit of repair.
Yeah. And that varies as to where they were actually hit. Depends on how much repair is necessary.
That's right.
Sometimes we want, I think we'll face this one like on a say a coyote or a bobcat. We've had a number of them. Well, I think we'll put this side towards the wall. We can sew up some pretty bad stuff, and you won't see it unless you look for it. But I mean, if it's better to put the nicer side out.
Yeah. Now, how are critters supposed to be prepared and cared for before they ever get in the door here? You've just harvested a deer, a trophy deer, or your first buck, your spike horn, whatever. You've got it. What do you do with it before it gets over here?
Some of it depends on the weather. In warm weather, you want to get it cooled down and in a cold place as soon as you can. In November, it's not as critical when it's cold out, potentially. Sometimes we've had some pretty warm Novembers where it's an issue. But you need to keep it cold if it's not cold out already, and don't let it hang for a month before you bring it in. Or don't skin it and then set the hide in the garage and leave it there for 3 weeks before you decide to bring it in. Or we're going to run the risk of it not being any good. But keep it cold, bring it in relatively quickly, fairly soon, within a few days.
Does it happen very often that somebody walks in the door with one that really shouldn't be mounted?
Yeah, once in a while. Not, I wouldn't say frequently, but it happens at least once a year. That somebody brings something in that's a little on the ripe side.
Sat in the garage a little too long.
Been out there a little too long, yeah.
What is the biggest mistake people make when they want something mounted?
Depends on what in particular, I guess.
On each particular critter? Like, let's take a bear. What can go wrong with a bear, the way people take care of it or want it posed or documented or whatever? What can go wrong?
If they skin it themselves, it can be an issue, depending on what they want done. I mean, that's an issue with anything, depending on whether there's deer and moose, probably more so, because when they say a full shoulder mount, they think they don't think of how much hide it's actually going to take. They really need almost half the hide to do a full shoulder mount. So most of the time, what I recommend is skin it and I tell them how I want it skinned, and said, don't cut it off. Bring the whole thing, and then at least if they got it cut wrong, I got all the pieces. And we have sewed. A lot of times we sew them back. Where they used to screw up is down around the brisket. They end up cutting down the inside of the front legs, and they go right straight across the brisket instead of angling back towards the breastbone. So that ends up leaving that brisket area too short for a full shoulder mount. If they bring me the whole skin, those flaps that are on either side are still there, and I can sew them back in. It's a pain in the neck, and I don't charge extra for it, but I should. It takes us almost as long to sew those patches in as it did to mount the deer.
My guest is John Dykstra, and I'm his guest over here at Northland Taxidermy in Alton. This shop is where the magic happens. Maine has a long tradition of hunting and fishing, and a long tradition of sporting camps and fireplace mantles. And we've got a lot of mounted critters in the state, most of them pretty good, some of them maybe could use a little improvement. Good and bad taxidermy coming up. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Today's show is coming to you from Alton. I'm in the taxidermy shop of John Dykstra, well known as Northland Taxidermy. John does some professional guiding too, but most of the time you'll find him right here because you get a lot of mounts to get out the door. He's popular. His stuff is good. Some stuff, especially from decades ago, maybe not so good.
I've seen some really good taxidermy in the state, and I've seen a little that wasn't so good.
Yeah.
Are there actual competitions?
There are, yeah. I used to go to some. I don't go to them anymore. I've been busy enough. I've a lot of competitions. They do. The taxidermist spends a lot of time on a piece that he's going to use for competition, and I haven't felt that it was justified to take that time away from doing customers' work.
Well, you're busy most of the time, if not all the time.
Yeah, we're busy. We're busy with one thing or another a lot of the time. Yeah. So I haven't competed. You can learn a lot from competing, and I did. And you can learn a lot from looking at stuff that's been done for competition, and I have in the past.
Do you actually ever look at a specimen, maybe that you collected yourself, and just fall so much in love with it that you just have to mount it for your own pleasure?
I do my own stuff. Yeah. I shot a deer in 2010.
That one right there. Yeah.
But I wouldn't mount that one for myself until after I got all my customer work done for that year.
Yeah.
Even though I wanted to get it mounted, I wouldn't do it until my customer's work was done. I didn't want anybody saying that I was doing mine first.
Yeah, but I guess the point is that it's still very much a pleasure for you, especially if you get a specimen that really deserves to be shown off.
And it depends on. It doesn't have to, like I said initially. It doesn't have to be big. It has to mean something. I mean, the first deer a kid shoots might be a button horn or a spike horn or a doe, and it's no trophy to a lot of deer hunters. But it is to that kid.
Exactly.
Or sometimes an adult. I've done some small deer for adults, grown men. That was the first deer they ever shot. They might be 40 years old. The first deer they ever shot. And it means something to them. So it's not the size as much as it is what it means.
I look around. I see a couple of otters. Do people bring in otters very often?
Yeah. Not. Why wouldn't they not? Yeah, we get a few of them a year. But when we do, but pretty much we're licensed as a general taxidermist. We do whatever comes through the door, and we do a few otters.
I think my favorite mount is a bobcat.
They're pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, you can put them anywhere. You can put them up on the mantle or on a shelf somewhere, and they just sit up there and stare down at you, and that's kind of spooky but interesting.
Yeah, they're hard to get their facial expressions right. You've probably seen some bobcat mounts that didn't look quite right.
Yeah, but if they look right,
if they look right, they're pretty neat.
You can make them really lifelike.
Yeah,
and I've always been, tickled whenever I see a bobcat mount. What's a proper way to say this? Does anyone in the business ever say you've stuffed an animal, or is it all mounted? What's the right terminology?
Mounted would be preferred to stuffing. I mean, you stuff a turkey. And they used to call it stuffing, and they still do, and joking, whatever. But it's not. It's more than that, because you're not just stuffing the skin with something. You're putting the skin over a replica of the body more or less, and you have to, not just that, but you have to adjust that skin. That's what taxidermy is that, I mean, the root of taxi is to move, and dermy is skin, so you move skin, and that's what we do, we move skin around.
But if somebody walks in the door and says, I want this stuffed, you don't instantly correct them?
No.
No. I look around and I see one goose, one woodcock. I'm guessing you don't do a lot of birds, but you do some.
It depends. What's in the showroom depends on what season it is. We don't do a lot of birds because we don't have a lot of people bring them in. We do more, like I said, we do more deer heads, deer, bear, and moose than we do probably anything else. But we do ducks, we do fish, and if you come in here when I do a lot of times I do things in batches too. And if I'm doing a batch of birds, there'd be a lot more birds in here.
And again, it comes, I mean, you get busiest after each one of the individual seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, after bear season, you get a lot of bears. Well,
yeah, but it takes a while to get to them. Because when somebody brings something through the door, it's generally, you can say roughly about a year before you're going to get it back.
Wow,
give or
that
take.
long? Yeah.
Sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little less. If I just want the hide tanned, once it goes to the tannery, comes back from the tannery, we might get that back in as short as a couple of months or 6 months, or there's somewhere between 2 to 6 months. We should have it back from the tannery most of the time. It's done at that point. But if it's a mount, then we have to, once we get it back from the tannery, we have to get to it.
Does Maine have a lot of tanneries, or do you have to send a distance, or what?
There's a tannery in Maine that I use some. There's another tannery in Pennsylvania that I use some.
I can't remember or think. I don't remember any occasion of ever seeing a tannery, so I have no idea where they are.
Yeah, there's one up in Oakfield. Greg McNally runs that one. He does a good job. We have dealt with, before we started doing anything with Greg, we sent stuff down to in Pennsylvania, East Coast tanneries, and a lot of the taxidermists from Maine do use East Coast. They're one of the bigger tanneries in the East for taxidermy. I mean, taxidermy tannery is different than shoe leather tannery. We have a tannery in Heartland for shoe leather, right? But that's not where you get a deer head done.
Anyone ever walk in with antlers and say, "Here, put a deer under these"?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, you would still need a deer hide of some kind.
We need to have a volunteer for that. Yeah.
But with a particularly big set of antlers, it would be kind of fun to have that mounted.
Yeah. We've a couple times a year we'll have somebody do that, where they'll bring in a set of horns that I shot these when I was a kid. I couldn't afford it at the time. I didn't. For some reason or another, they didn't do it at the time when they got it, and they want to get it done, and we can do that.
Obviously, you're busy, but people want to use your services because you're so good at it. So let's put them all in line. How would they get in touch with you, and what can they expect?
They can look me up in the phone book, usually. That's how most people do it. Yellow Pages has been my best advertising. Actually, the best advertising, word of mouth. Probably better than the Yellow Pages. You do a good job for somebody, they're going to sell somebody else. And that's how I get probably most of the business that I get.
Well, your reputation really has spread. I mean, people know about you.
Yeah. But, yeah, and for his phone number, they can get a hold of me at 207-394-2031.
And just remember, you're not going to get an instant mount either. It's going to take a while.
No, some people are quite surprised at that, but yeah, it's going to take a while. But it'll look good.
Yep. Well, you're going to put your heart and soul into an animal. It's going to take some time.
Yeah. If you rush it, it shows.
Well, can you give me a quick peek into the shop here and just tell me what goes on in here?
Yeah. What do you want to see, or what do you see that you wonder about?
I mean, tools. I mean, what do you? Let's start with just what's back here. I see mannequins. I see works in progress.
Yeah. The people look at that. And how do you keep track of everything?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a tag on everything.
Yeah.
With tools we use, there are a lot of tools that are used for other things as well. They're we just adapt them to use them to do a particular job that we need to do. We use Dremel modal tools to do grinding out lip slots. We use die grinders and needles and scissors and hammers and all that sort of thing. I mean, we use Bondo. We don't do auto body work with it. We use a lot of Bondo. We use it for glue, and we use it for ear liners.
Now I see something. It's a deer leg being made into a lamp.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of calls for interesting furniture made out of animals?
I think they used to be more popular than it is now. We still do some. I wouldn't say it's a lot, but we do some. It looks nice. It's not cheap to do either.
If somebody wants a bearskin rug, are you the guy to come to, or is that too easy to do and others can do it?
You still got to mount the head.
Yeah, well, that's true.
and so we do a lot of those. There's several of those hanging right on the wall right there that are in the works in progress as well. We get the hide back, we put the head shell in it, and either do the rug work here, or we have a woman actually in Pennsylvania that's all she does is rug work, and we'll send stuff down to her, and she'll put the felt on it and the backing on it, and they look really nice. And then when they come back, we do the finish work and call them up.
As a taxidermist, what do you worry about most? Is there anything that keeps you awake at night besides meeting deadlines?
Not getting stuff done in time, not getting stuff done quick enough.
Because frankly, it looks like a pretty good life. You get to work at home, you get to work in your own shop, you get to deal with great stories, great outdoors people who have had adventures and now want to share them with you.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice.
It's got its benefits. It's got its drawbacks at times. I mean, everybody shows up at dinner time. I tell them, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what time we sit down, it's going to be dinner time. That's when somebody's going to show up. So. Well,
thank you very much for the tour, and thanks again for joining me on Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Glad to have you. Glad to be here.
John Dykstra, Northland Taxidermy in Alton. Coming up, there's a new Wildfire. For 2 decades, Wildfire was a popular cable TV show for sportsmen and outdoors people, hosted by George Smith and Harry Vanderwide. Then it went away. Then it came back. Then it went away again. And now it's back with George and a new co-host. We'll meet him next and find out what it's on. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. For 2 decades, a cable TV show called Wildfire was the highlight of the week for many Maine outdoors people. It was a lively discussion about sporting issues, outdoor recreation, legislation, you name it. Well, it's back, hosted by George Smith and now co-hosted by James Cody. Let's meet the new guy. James Cody, there's going to be a new Wildfire, and you're on it. Now, when I first got to meet you, you were working with the Forest Products Council, so you have a checkered past.
I do. I certainly do. There's no question about that. I have worn a lot of hats, I think, in the outdoor industry. Started out when we first started working together at the Forest Products Council. I've done a lot of work for the construction industry in the past. More recently, I've worked for sportsman advocacy groups, including the Maine Trappers Association and the Maine Sporting Dog Association and the Maine Sporting Camp Association. But people probably know me best from my role as campaign manager on the bear referendum in 2014.
Which is part of the point of having you on the show, is you've got a wide range of experiences that you can bring to the table.
I do. And I think that will benefit the audience because we can compel guests to bring us some information that maybe folks not as well-versed in these subjects can. Obviously, George, co-host George Smith, has been very involved in these issues for a long time. I bring a little bit different perspective to the table, but I think having somebody that's both familiar with the issues and then, from a very personal perspective, passionate about the issues we're talking about, makes a lot of sense for viewers.
Yep. Wildfire is a program that has been around in one form or another for a very long time. I'm going to say 20 years, but I could be off by a little. I
think that's right. George Smith and Harry Vanderwide started it sometime, I think, in the mid-1990s, and it's taken a few different iterations since that time, and this is version 3, so we're going to give it a try.
I was closely involved with version 2 when it went to Maine Audubon for a little while, and then the cable network got swallowed up by another cable network, and Audubon went through a leadership transition, and Wildfire went away for a little while, and we were wondering if it'd ever come back.
Well, and that's the thing. We get the question all the time, when was it going to come back? I was with George several times, people asking, when's it going to be back? And I think one of the things that we both started to realize, this was a couple of months ago, is that there's a real need for this type of forum in the state. We need some place where people can talk about outdoor issues, debate outdoor issues, and really compel people to think a little bit more creatively about what we're doing in the outdoors.
Furthermore, I think Wildfire evolved over the years, and originally it was really just a hook and bullet type of program, a lot of hunting and fishing, and that was about it. And then it got into more of the larger
outdoor issues that really we have a lot in common across the state, things that are really significant.
No question about it. That's one thing George and I really want to make sure that we strive to do is not only talk about just hunting and fishing, but we want to talk about tourism. We want to talk about natural resource policy and what's going on in the Natural Resources Committee here in the legislature. We want to talk about agriculture and renewable energy. There's all kinds of topics that impact people that love the outdoors that maybe we don't think about from day to day. And I think the goal of Wildfire is to bring those issues to the forefront.
Which is amazing because so much of this deals with the rural economy. All the things you just mentioned, from forestry to hunting and fishing, etc., all of that is natural resource based, and that is what the northern Maine economy is especially about. So we do need a forum to talk about it.
And there's probably no time where we've had a greater need to talk about these issues and to compel people to think creatively about these issues than right now. I mean, we're seeing things happen in the paper industry. We're seeing needs in the tourism industry, et cetera, et cetera. So now's a great time to do this. We're excited about it.
Now, I know George Smith is really keen on this, too. We have almost no trouble pulling anybody into the coast to see the lobsters and lighthouses. We have a hard time pulling them into the internal part of the state to go see moose and mountains.
And it just baffles me.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Because there's people from all over the country that I think would love to come to inland Maine. We don't do a very good job of marketing. In fact, we just taped one of our first shows with Don Kleiner of the Maine Professional Guides Association, talked a lot about these issues. We also talked to Deirdre Fleming about the lack of writing about the outdoor issues.
And she's Portland Press Herald.
In the Portland Press Herald, yeah. And they were both great, but I think everybody understands this, so we need something to propel us to actually do something, and hopefully Wildfire can catalyze people to do it.
Now, you've taped your first program. Where and when is this going to air? How can people now find it, especially in my end of the state?
It's going to air on Channel 9, Time Warner Cable, for about 350,000 households, and those times will be publicized here in the near future. I'm sure you can look at georgesmithmaine.com, and he'll be advertising the exact times that the program will be airing on Channel 9. The other place to check it out is on vstv.me. And that is our production company, and they've got several other shows that they do. There'll be an entire website devoted to Wildfire.
All right. I confess I have no idea who they are. Where are they and what do they do?
They are out of Rockport, Maine, and they produce several different shows, from cooking shows to news broadcasts and sports broadcasts, and then they publicize a lot of these shows on local access stations, Time Warner and other locations. But they've got their own internet channel, and we'll be on that at vstv.me.
Okay. Now, going forward, what's this show going to look like compared to how it's looked in the past? It's always, for the most part, been two talking heads and a guest, maybe two guests, short episodes. How's it going to look? Same or different?
Similar as far as format. So it'll be a lot of three people talking. George and I will be asking the guests questions, but there will be some new segments where we bring new people in, where we're up and about. We want to bring some of the shows on location, maybe to sporting camps or elsewhere.
Oh, that'd be great.
So yeah, absolutely. Now the key for me is to make sure that George doesn't do all the talking.
Yeah, good luck with that.
But so far so good. He's letting me do at least a little bit of it. So
well, and we're going to miss Harry Vanderwide. And if you ever wanted a cautionary tale about Lyme disease, Harry's the one, because Lyme disease has really affected his life to the point where he can't be on Wildfire anymore. He was a longtime host.
I've had a lot of great adventures with Harry over the years. I've bear hunted with him and fished with him, and just a great sportsman and a great man. Sorry to see him go, but I think it just highlights the need for us all when we're out in the outdoors to pay attention to Lyme disease and the ticks that are out there.
Now, one of the things I think you could do is spice it up with your guests a little bit more, like competitions on camera. I'm thinking next time, instead of a bear referendum, it's just me and Katie Hansberry, and we'll arm wrestle. Now, she'll win, but it'll be entertaining.
I love that idea.
I mean, I have the arms of a T-Rex. I'm going to lose this one.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we're trying to bring is a new twist to the show. We're talking about some new segments. We'll have a survey question of the week where we ask folks, and then they can go online and answer questions. We'll report back the results. We're going to have a Books and Brew segment where we try a new beer and talk about a book we've read in the past.
This is my kind of program.
Absolutely. So we're going to try to shake things up a little bit and bring issues to people in a new format.
So it'll be on Time Warner Cable, Channel 9, It'll be online at vst.org.
vstv.me.
vstv.me. All right, got that right. And, of course, George blogs in the Bangor Daily News, and he'll probably mention this show a whole lot, so if anyone has trouble connecting up and finding it, George will have it.
Absolutely.
Great. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
James Cody, new host of Wildfire, the long-running cable TV show also hosted by a legend in his own mind, George Smith. It's got a new home, a new host, and new times on Time Warner Cable, Channel 9. As for this radio show, you can hear it every Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 8. You can even hear old shows on the web at the station website, 929theticket.com. They're all archived right there. Just go to my picture and click on me. I like being clicked on. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.